So, Rent, one of the game changers in the musical theater in the 1990s, so the height of the AIDS scare, if you recall. Also, the musical with a dark backstory. This was the musical that took some time in the making. It's a rock musical with music, lyrics, and book by one person, the man called Jonathan Larson. He conceived it as a kind of modernized version of Puccini's opera La Bohème. We'll talk about the operatic connection in a little moment, but first perhaps about the musical itself. It tells a story about a group of friends, quite impoverished young artists living in Manhattan, and of course the main problem is, as the title suggests, paying rent, money, but also the growing danger of HIV infection. As I said, there is a dark backstory because this musical started, the first version of this musical started in 1993. It was quite successful, and then it was moved to Broadway, first to an off-Broadway theater and then to a Broadway theater in 1996. And on the night before, just one night before the off-Broadway premiere, the creator of the show, Jonathan Larson, died suddenly. He was a young man, and nobody really knew what happened. It turned out that he had a heart disease he didn't know about. So this was a shadow of the tragedy. Of course, many people believed that perhaps he dragged himself, or he died from drug overdose, or he died from AIDS, or whatever. There were different rumors circulated because these are the themes in the musical. The truth is, he died of an undiagnosed heart disease, but as it sometimes happens, the death of the creator kind of immortalized the work and created mass interest from the media. So but this was a good show. This was really a good show. It won several Tonys, including the most important Tonys for Best Musical, Best Original Score, and Best Book. Plus, it got nominations for 4 actors, one of them eventually winning the award, the actor who played the role of Angel, the role of the gender fluid, let's put it this way, or drag queen character. And as I said already, this musical, the idea about a group of friends trying to pursue artistic careers and dealing with some everyday problems, this was inspired by Puccini's opera La Bohème, about the artistic underworld of late 19th century Paris. Of course, now it's late 20th century New York, but if you look at the characters, some of them are almost directly modernized versions of the characters from La Bohème. So we have Roger, the main character. You might argue who's the main character here, but the actor playing Roger was nominated for the main role, so let's assume Roger, the songwriter who wants to write a hit song, is a kind of modernized version of Rodolfo, a poet. So we have the transition from writing poetry to composing songs. So now, rather than writing poems, you want to write song lyrics. Then we have Mimi. his love interest, who originally also was called Mimi, and she was a lace maker. So she was quite a respectable, even though very poor, young woman. Here she is a stripper, possibly a prostitute as well. And both these characters are HIV positive. They do not have fully developed AIDS perhaps yet, but they are positive. It is quite important. Note that they are heterosexual and they got infected through heterosexual contacts. Roger knows, he suspects, well, there's not any other possibility. He got it from his previous girlfriend, who was a drug addict. Mimi, well, it's not said, perhaps she got it while working. Other artists in this group are Mark, an independent filmmaker, so he is more into graphic arts. So, of course, he is a modernized version of a painter, Marcello. And his girlfriend of sorts, or ex-girlfriend, Maureen, who is a performance artist, who is inspired but I would say more elaborated version of Musetta, a singer and also quite a flirtatious woman in the opera. Who else do we have? We have Joanne, who is, some say, well, if you look at the Rent Wikipedia page, you'll have the whole table of similarities, and they say that Joanne, the current girlfriend of Marine, is also based on someone, a lawyer from the opera, who is a current, maybe not a boyfriend, he's much older, sponsor of Musetta. Well, perhaps to some extent. But then we have Chanel, a musician in La Boheme, and Colleen, a philosopher, and they are our next couple. So Angel, the drag queen, who is actually ill with AIDS, and his partner, who is an intellectual, you might say a philosopher, a philosophy professor at New York University, so an academic of sorts, Tom Collins. So they are kind of inspired. Plus there is Benjamin, their landlord, an interesting character because he used to be one of them. He used to be one of these friends, but he came to the dark side. He decided to get a job and basically start living a grown-up life, because this is another problem here. So let's look at the two important aspects of Rent, namely the love and sex relationships, and then the money. So let's start with romantic and sexual relationships. Puccini's opera had all kinds of romantic entanglement, but they were of course strictly heterosexual. Here we have at least 5 people who are not, maybe, let's say 4, perhaps Mark is heterosexual, he was just involved with a bisexual woman. So 4 characters who are not heterosexual. So we have Angel and Tom Collins, gay partners. Additionally, Angel is a drag queen, so he dresses up as a woman if he pleases, not always, but sometimes. And then we have Marie and Joanne, so the ex-girlfriend of Mark, a performance artist, and Joanne, if you watch the film version, she was played by a black actress, and also Tom Collins was played by a black actor. Joanne is a lawyer, so you might see already that this musical goes against the grain of many stereotypes. For example, that darker skin color would be associated with less education and more relative poverty. You don't have it here. Actually, Tom is the most educated, perhaps, being a university lecturer, and Joanne is very well educated. She's got a good job. She comes from an upper middle class family, and even though they are African Americans, they are really very, very cultured people with high standard of life. So Joanne is like a visitor in this artistic squad, because she could live in in a very comfortable apartment. So that's one thing. We go against the expectations. We go against the stereotypes. Another thing, which is I think quite interesting, is that sexual orientation of the characters is a non-problem. It's just part of who they are. Nobody makes a fuss. Nobody is behaving in any kind of homophobic way towards anyone, towards Tom and Angel, towards Maureen and Joanne even strikes a very unusual friendship with Mark over the girlfriend that they used to share. So there is even one scene which is especially visible in the film version. I think you probably watched the film version, most of you haven't yet. When Maureen and Joanne attend a very elegant party, which is organized by the parents. So it's almost like an engagement party in the, let's say, upper middle class community. But because, of course, this is long before same-sex marriages, the parents acknowledge, they support their daughters. They have nothing against whatsoever against their relationship, and they stage this kind of beautiful, lavish party in a very expensive restaurant. And what happens? The fiancés themselves start to quarrel over their personalities, over the behaviors they don't like in each other. The fact that Joanne is controlling and Maureen is flirtatious, and they break up. And the parents are quite horrified. They like the idea of having this kind of wedding-like arrangement. So there is no homophobia at all, which perhaps is not what you might expect, especially if you look at other musicals which feature those LGBT characters. They usually struggle. They usually have to discover who they are. They have to come out to their parents. They have to come out to their friends. And they have to fight for acknowledgement and respect. Here, they get the respect. Why not? The problem they are all facing, homosexual and heterosexual alike, is the danger of HIV virus. And what we have are scenes in some sort of psychological support group for the HIV positive. So people come and they try to comfort each other in their fear of the disease, in the fear, as they say in the song, of losing their dignity, of losing their humanity, regardless of how they got the disease and how they live. So what we have in this musical as a central theme is probably the celebration of love in the face of mortal danger. And this goes again back to Puccini's opera, because in La Boheme, what we have is the danger of tuberculosis, the killer disease of the 19th century. Which was not transmitted sexually. It could be, of course. It was transmitted through close contact, any kind of close contact. And this is perhaps the biggest difference between the plots of Rent and La Boheme. In La Boheme, spoiler alert, Mimi dies in the end. They have a falling out and Mimi goes missing for a while. They find her, so it's just like in Rent. And the lover says he's sorry. He is a horrible character, but anyway, they forgive each other. They kiss one last time, and then Mimi dies, and poor poet just cries out her name. And this is how Rent is pretending to end, and then Mimi recovers consciousness, and she gives this whole story about meeting Angel, who had died, of course, earlier, in heaven, and Angel sending her back, and she still has AIDS, so perhaps she'll die the next day, but not today, not now. And this is a kind of optimistic ending, which links to many songs and many scenes in the entire musical. If you think of this big chorus act, the Seasons of Love, that you shouldn't really measure time in months and years and any conventional matters, but you should measure your life in love. So the intensity of your feelings as if makes up for the danger of shorter life. And also we have those beautiful scenes between Tom and Angel, and it links very nicely with the title, because we'll talk about the money in a little moment, but the idea that you cannot buy love, but you can rent it. This was something that was taken quite literally in this musical, and as I understand it, is that it can be given freely, but it can be given forever, because you never know how long you're going to live. So we have one love story that ends in separation through death. We have another love story that ends in breakup. And we have another story of the central characters, Roger and Mimi, which ends in this kind of hopeful ending that perhaps they will survive one more day or one more week, but the intensity of their feelings makes it worthwhile. So we continue in a moment.